Welcome everyone. My name is Shreya, and today I'm going to walk you through some of the basics of Falcon Editor, and we'll also be creating a few things, and really excited to get started. So, throughout the session, if you have any doubts, any questions, please feel free to just speak up or send a message in the chat. In the middle, I will be giving you guys breaks to catch up with what I'm going to demonstrate. So don't worry about it. If I show you something and you want me to repeat the steps, that part will happen later on as well. And before we get started, we need to open up the Falcon editor on each of your virtual machines. So if you guys could set this up beforehand, it would help because it takes about 5-10 minutes to load.
Hi, this is Saikiran here. It's just initializing, so it's taking a minute. So that's what I'm waiting for. Is it normal for it to take a bit? Okay.
Yes, the reason we're doing this immediately is because it does take a little bit of time for things to happen, and so we can cover some content while things are loading. Thank you
No,
for asking, though.
no, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. It's loaded now. Thank you.
So if this is loaded, you can double click on that to get it started, because again, it will take time to load.
So basically, once you log in to the VM and you just click on the Falcon Editor shortcut to run the engine, this should by default open up.
So I'm going to take this time to also go over some of the resources in the handout. So while we're waiting for this to load, everyone you got this handout in your email, and then I also put it in the chat. Let me know if you need me to put it in the chat again. And it has helpful links like where to create your EDU license and how to set up your virtual machine. But down here, I also want to point out it has links to some of our documentation so that if you get lost with some of these steps, especially with setup, because setup can sometimes be confusing or things can go wrong or you can get behind, you can click on these links and it will also has the written instructions for this. So this one is talking about the next step that we're going to do, which is opening up the U project. So if you get lost for some reason, or if you want to go back, you can look at that. And this one's about configuring the file pathways, which we'll cover later. So these resources are here in case you get confused or lost. And then down here, it also has some links to information that we're not going to be covering in this class, but you particularly might find it interesting. So we got some great videos by some of our experts here at Duality. And so if you are interested, you can go and check out some of those, such as this one dives into more of the Python controls of the Falcon Editor API. And this one even talks about creating your own system twin. So these are, very useful tools. We're not going to cover today, but you can go and check them out on your own. Straight fast. So once you've gotten to probably this screen, we're actually going to want you to go into recent projects. So in order to open up Falcon Editor, you first have to open up a template project, and there is one already included in the Falcon Editor. So you can go up to recent projects and you go down here to browse. And you're going to navigate to where all the Falcon files are, all the twins, the scenarios, etc. So the location of that, I'm going to put it in the chat right here. So if you just want to put that in the browse bar, you can, and it'll take you to where you need to go. But the roundabout way is it's on the C disk under users in Green Rain, because we're Green Rain. And then once you're under your user's account, you're going to go to Falcon Catalog. That's where it holds all the files for the scenario. And then the U projects for Falcon Editor are always going to be kept in the work folder. So you click on work, template project, Unreal, and then U project. And again, this should be the exact same as the pathway. So then you double click on that. and you're going to need to go more options, convert in place. And once you click on that, it'll start loading. It might hold at 45% for a long time. That's okay. Okay, and then this is it loading. I'm gonna stop sharing. You can put your questions in the chat if you get lost while Shreya goes on with some of the content. A reminder that this is also in the handout. All right, take it away, Shreya. Thank you.
Okay, so the template project will take some time to load, and once it does load, this is what it should look like. So you can just leave this in the background for now, and we'll get started with some of the things we need to know before we can actually start building things with Falcon Editor. So the learning objectives for today's class is to basically create and edit twins using Falcon Editor, and then also to create and modify a scenario within Falcon Editor. And after we've done this, we're going to be adding sensors and exporting some data, which is the entire purpose of this exercise. So before we go into that, it's important to understand a little bit of theory. So the first thing to understand is what is a digital twin. So a digital twin is a 3D representation of any real world object. So its goal is to resemble as closely as possible the 3D, real world counterpart. So this will be in terms of shape, texture, size, weight, all of those. And it will be a replica of something that exists in the real world. So on this slide below, you can see three different images. So the first is of a plant. The second one is of something called a quadcopter, which is like a drone. And the third one is, if any of you are familiar with Unreal already, then you would be familiar with environments and levels. So this is basically a garden kind of environment. And within twins, we actually have four categories available to us. So the first one is environment twins. So this is basically just the environment that we're navigating. So it could be a forest, a desert, a warehouse. We'll look at a few examples in a few moments. And for today's class, we'll be using the desert scenario. Then we have item twins, which are individual objects that can be placed inside of an environment. So an item is essentially an item you would place within that environment. So again, this could be rocks, trees, plants, etc. Then we have system twins, and this is typically something that moves around and has the ability to traverse through the environment. So this could be a vehicle, such as a car, quadcopter, AMR. It could even be a human character or a floating camera. And to control the movement, we can either hard code it through the engine itself, or we can also write a Python script to control the movement. And in this class, we'll be using a system twin called the Falcon SUV. Then finally, we have utility twins. So these are a special case of twins that actually don't have a real world equivalent, but it exists within our simulation. So an example of this would be the user interface we see whenever we run a program or run a simulation. So the menu items and all of the settings data, all of that you see, it's because of a utility twin. But there's no real world counterpart of that. It only exists within the simulation. Okay, so the next thing we'll discuss is what is a scenario, because I think we've thrown around this word quite a bit, at least I think I have. But a scenario is basically a scene where we're compiling all of the digital twins together into one virtual 3D space. So the scenario is essentially the whole package where you have the environment twins, the item twins, the system twins, and it's where you're going to run the simulation. So within Falcon Editor, if we want to create and promote assets to twins, we would do it in something called the Unreal mode. And if we wanted to assemble all the twins together and actually run something, that would be a scenario in Falcon mode. So out of everyone present here, is anyone familiar with Unreal Engine already? Okay, that's great. We have someone familiar with it. Okay, as long as you know the basics and as long as you've worked a little bit with Unreal assets and blueprints, and I think Falcon Editor should be fairly easy to pick up. So think of Unreal Engine as the kind of container that contains the scenario on which we're running all of our Falcon simulations. So Rebecca initially mentioned that we can't run a scenario without first opening a U project file. And this is the reason for that. And that's why the template project is completely blank, because when we create something, it's not actually going to be a U project file. So we're not going to modify the U project file at all. Instead, we're going to use it as a gateway to access Falcon mode, and then assemble all of our twins into one place. Okay, so this slide basically shows you what Unreal mode looks like. So for those of you familiar with Unreal, you would have seen something like this already before. And I'll explain the layout in a while. And when you switch to Falcon mode within the editor, basically this is where you run the simulation. And this actually is a screenshot of what we're going to make today. So we're going to take this Falcon SUV and run it through a desert twin and capture some data using our sensors and then export that. So before we go into creating the scenario, it's really important to understand Falcon Cloud. And I think Rebecca would have included a link to this as well in case you guys want to check it out yourself. But I'll explain the Falcon website a bit. So this is the homepage that you open to, and you can see a bunch of options, a bunch of tabs on the left, as well as this username icon on the right. So over here, when you click your account, it basically shows you all of your account details. So this one is mine. And then this is quite important. Whenever you want to download anything, all of the resources will be over here. So Falcon Editor and also a bunch of tutorials, which I would encourage you guys to check out later on. So all of this can be gotten from that download tab. Then we have something called digital twins. So we just now spoke about twins, and 1 second, just let this load. Right, so we see a variety of twins loading up already. And if you see over here, it's giving you the option to filter this as well. So you can search for only items or only systems or even environments if that's what you want. So over here, it's all of it is all together. But let's say I only want to look at environment twins. Then I could click on this, and now it would show me only the environments which are available on the website. Okay, so we see that there's one meadows environment. We see that there's this mountain road environment. We can see that there's this farm environment. So all of these environments are where you can actually create, you can use these to create a scenario, and then you would use a system twin to navigate through that environment. So this is taking some time to load, but you guys should definitely check it out. Over here we have a duality room, looks like a desert environment. So does this one. So this is quite fun to play around with, and it gives you a lot of options. Then we have something called scenarios. So when you click on this tab, it seems to be lagging for me for some reason. Okay. So these are a bunch of scenarios that are already made and uploaded onto the Falcon Cloud. So if you click on any of these, it will show you the details of those scenarios, and then you have the option to run them on the website without having to download the editor, run it yourself. So for example, let's say I want to look at, 1 second, let's just give it a minute to load. Okay, let's say I want to see the Laurel Highlands. So I can click on this and it will show me the details of that scenario. So here it says that in this scenario, you will fly a quadcopter vehicle through a forest environment. And if I click on new session, it's going to take me to this sessions tab where I can actually run the simulation within Falcon Cloud itself. So I won't do that right now because it's a bit time consuming process, but I ran this scenario yesterday and I can show you the kind of data that we can get. So for this Sedona RZR scenario, it tells me the description that we drove an RZR vehicle through the Sedona desert. It contained two digital twins, a system twin and the Sedona desert, which is the environment twin. And then it also gives me an output. So I have a log file as well as an output zip file. And it also tells me what the scenario was and what were the digital twins that I used in this scenario. So this is quite interesting. And if you run a scenario and get it in your sessions tab, you can definitely go through the kind of outputs you get as well. Then we have this Learn tab. So this basically contains all of the tutorials, all of the documentation, and it's a great resource to get started. So in the exercises tab, we have a bunch of exercises which you can do. And I would encourage you to look at this once you're already familiar with the basics. And to get started, the documentation is the best place. So it contains a variety of information. So it has if all the way from introduction to examples to how to modify something within Falcon Editor, creating twins and scenarios. So if you see, it's a really, really long list. And there is one thing I wanted to point your attention to, and that is the glossary. So I can also search the docs. Okay. Okay. Yes. So this glossary page, giving it a second to load. So this is basically a lot of the key terms that we use when we discuss Falcon. And as someone who's a beginner, some of it might be a little overwhelming and different from what you're used to. But this glossary page gives you a list of all of the terms as well as a one sentence explanation of what it is. So all the way from a world to what Unreal mode is. So definitely check this out. Okay, I think that's all that we had to cover for Falcon Cloud. If there's any questions so far, let me know. And now we're going to look at the loaded Falcon editor itself. So can all of you confirm if the template your project is loaded for you? Don't worry, let it take its time. Okay, I think while it's loading, I can explain a little bit about the Falcon catalog.
That'd be great.
So, like Rebecca mentioned, yes. So for me, it's going to be different for everyone's computer. But for me, when I go into my C drive and then click on users and then click on my name, I get this place called Falcon Catalog. And once you open the Falcon Catalog, you might have seen these three folders: scenarios, twins, and work. So let me explain the structure a little bit. So over here on the left, this image, it basically gives you an overview of what the different directory are. And the one on the right is a little more detailed. So in the scenario file, we have the scenario name, and it has a USD file as well as a Python file. In the twin, it also has a similar thing, USD and Python, as well as whatever assets you're using for Falcon Editor. And then finally, in the work directory, we have the U projects and all of the UAS. So again, I draw your attention to the fact when we create a scenario, it's different from creating the Unreal project. So over here in my directory, when I click on scenarios, let's say these are all of the scenarios. So I think you should also have the introductory tutorial ones. So let's say I open this. So over here, I see the USDA file and I also see the Python source file. So these are the two files available to me. And if I try to directly open this from here, I'm not going to be able to do that because I need to access it through the Unreal Engine. Similarly, for the twins, I can see a list of all of the twins I have. And I think you guys should also have all of these introductory ones. So for the quadcopter, or let's say the sagebrush, or even the floor. So all of these are the twins, the individual items that we can put onto the scenario. And then finally, finally, we have the work folder. So this is all of the projects which can be loaded as Unreal Engine projects. So we loaded the template project, and this basically is just a blank project. And through this, we can access our scenario. And once we are in a scenario, then we can access the twins and put them into the scenario. So I hope the structure of the directory is clear to everyone. There's any questions on this, let me know. And if you try to open any of these, so Desert Duality, for example, is the one we'll be using. So you'll be able to open this as an Unreal Engine project as well.
And when you open the editor, it will ask for your login credentials. So those are the login credentials that you used when you created your EDU account. So that's why we needed you to create an EDU account.
Yes, very important. So if you want to run something, we have to first log in. And I think all of you have an EDU account, right? If anyone doesn't, just inform us. I think while it's still loading, we can also discuss the workflow of
That sounds good.
how we're be handling. Yeah. So I think scenario twin work, everyone has seen that in their respective Falcon catalogs. And if there's any confusion regarding this, let me know. Basically, work is where we have the U project files will be opening, and scenarios and twins are the what we're going to be using within Falcon mode. Okay, that's great if your login worked. Just saw the chat.
Yes.
Okay, now if it's loaded and you can see this blank project, then when you click on edit, so if you look at the top left, we have file, edit, window, all of those. So if you click on edit and look at editor preferences, second, let that just open up. So I think for your machines, we've already set this up, but I'm going to still explain it because it's pretty important to know. We need to first assign a code editor because in case we use any Python code, then we need to know where it's going to be reading that file from. So for example, on my machine is Visual Studio. If you can have any of these other ones too, it depends. So I'm using Visual Studio, and that's why in my code editor, I'm going to put the executable file of that Visual Studio located. So Rebecca, we've preloaded these already, right?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay,
Yes.
so you guys don't have to do anything at this point. Yes, I heard you, I got you. So you don't have to change any of this. It's already been loaded, but you should be aware that this is how it's working behind the scenes. And in case, maybe you download it again, you would have to set it yourself. So that's for the code editor. And there's another thing. Now, when we open something from within Falcon mode, we want to be able to access our Falcon catalog. And for that, the editor needs to know where our Falcon catalog is placed. So that's why if you search for Falcon catalog, so over here, the location for my catalog is C users Shreya Falcon catalog. So depending on whatever it is on your machine, you also should always first, before you get started working, you should always put the location of the Falcon catalog itself so that once you start using any of the assets, you don't run into any issues at that point. Okay, so I don't think you guys would need to do this because you've already done this step for you. If any of the computers don't have it, you guys can check and let me know. If you just search for code editor, you should find this Due editor and under that code editor. So just make sure you have the path over there. And then also search for Falcon. And within Falcon catalog, the Falcon catalog location path, again, it should already be there. Okay. So at this point, has everyone loaded the template project?
Let us know if you haven't loaded it.
Yes.
I think if people haven't, we could maybe do like a short 5-minute break.
Okay, sure. That might be a good idea. So we can just take a quick break here, wait for it to load, and then I'll see you guys in 5 minutes. So hope everyone's back. And so the next step, what we're going to do is open a scenario. So right now, I want to first show you that when you opened up the template project, the interface was something like this. And if I click on maps and open up new map, you see that is just a basic empty, this is basically the starter template, empty one. And over here, just for the people who are not familiar with Unreal Engine already, so we have a content folder which contains all of our assets. So over here is just an empty map. So that's the only asset we have over here in the content browser. Um, this viewport is basically everything which you are putting onto the level. So you can see that in the viewport. If you click on outliner, so this should be on the right, And if you don't see it, you can click on Windows and it'll be over here, Outliner as well as Details. So make sure you have these. In the Outliner, it tells you everything which is there loaded currently onto the map. And if you click on Details, it will show you the individual details of whatever you've selected. So right now I haven't selected anything, so Details is empty. And on Outliner, let's say I select the floor. So right now you can see the floor is highlighted. I've selected the floor, I can move it around. And if I click on Details, it will then show me the details of the floor. So for example, it tells me that this is static mesh component. It gives me like, okay, what material is here, as well as some of the properties of it. So all of this, I'm assuming you guys have a fair idea about, so I won't get into too much detail. But for the sake of this session, you should be aware of these things: the content browser, the outliner, and the details panel, all of these things. And now this is within Unreal mode. And if we were to switch to Falcon mode, we would have to open a scenario. So if you go to File on the top, and you'll see two options over here: Open Scenario, New Scenario, and Open Scenario. So over here, let's click on New Scenario because we're going to be creating a scenario from scratch. So if you click on this, this will if it gives you this pop-up of it's unsaved, never mind, let it be unsaved, it's okay. And now I'm going to give you guys a minute to do this, but if you see at the bottom, the content drawer is now changed. Over here, now we see something called twins. So if you remember from the Falcon catalog, when we clicked on twins, this was a list of all my twins, and now I have them over here visible, and I can add any of these onto the scenario. So now whatever we be creating in this blank space is the scenario, and all of these are the twins that we're going to use to assemble it. So here we have desert duality, we have something called a fixed based, we have a forest environment, we have a generic widget. So if you remember the categories of twins that we discussed, you can probably identify that desert and forest are environment twins because they have details about the environment and the world that we're going to be traversing through. Generic widget is a widget twin. So this is a utility twin. It doesn't have a real world counterpart. And the generic widget is what's going to give us the interface. So whenever we're navigating and we want to see some of the options, some of the sensor data on our screen, it will be through this generic widget. Then we have quadcopter, which is a system twin because it's a vehicle, it's a drone. Then we have something called sagebrush. So this is basically a plant. It's a sagebrush, and this is an item twin. So we can place this onto the environment as well. Then we have something called Simple Floor SUV Falcon Transmission Tower 2. So for the purpose of this tutorial, we'll be only using three twins. So the first thing to do is select Desert Duality, the first twin, and just click and drag it and place it onto the viewport. And now this step will take a few minutes. So while it's loading, we can go ahead. It's loaded relatively fast for me because I've loaded it already. And if it's loading like this for you, don't worry about it. Um, a bit about the navigation. I'm just going to click my right mouse button and then press E to go up. I'm on the map. And if I take a look around, this is what the desert duality, so it's a desert environment. Just to rehash, click on File, click on New Scenario, and once the new scenario opens up, out of all the twins available, just click and drag the desert twin onto the viewport. And if anyone would like me to repeat or clarify anything, let me know.
Yeah, mine actually loaded pretty fast. I don't know if anyone else is loaded fast. Let us know if yours is still loading or not. We don't want to leave anyone behind. All right, Shreya, we've got a couple loaded. Probably just
Okay.
wait a couple more seconds.
Okay, sure.
It seems like other
So for
people's are
those of
loading in.
you, yeah. So for those of you, if you can only see something like this, select the Falcon, the SUV Falcon Twin, and the way we just selected and clicked and dropped it into the viewport, do the same with this one. So just take it and drop it onto the yes. So it should be placed something like this. Okay, anyway, I think while it's loading, we can discuss a few more concepts while we're waiting for everyone for it to load. So once you've opened up a new scenario, let it load in the background, that's fine. You guys can see the slide, right?
Yes, we can see your
Yeah,
slides.
okay. So let's also discuss another important concept of what a simulation is, because we've used this word also quite a lot. So a simulation is just a test that we're going to apply to the scenario while all the twins are going to interact with each other. So when you press the play button or the so in this situation, it's going to be the car which is driving through the desert. And if you remember from the Falcon website, we saw a lot of other scenarios. A simulation is essentially when we are running the scenario. Okay, I think next, let's talk a little bit about Duality's workflow. So it has five main steps. The first one is to acquire. So this is getting or creating your digital twins. So for getting twins, we saw that on the Falcon Cloud, we have a lot of different twins. So we can download any of these and we can use them in our scene. So I think I can download one right now and show it to you. So let's say I want a rock. So I can search for a rock. Which I would like to place into my environment. I don't know why the website's working so slowly for me today.
I think the VMs slow everything down. Like
Yeah.
my computer's really slow because of that, but it makes sense.
Okay, so we've gotten a bunch of really nice looking rocks. So let's say I want to select this one, Iceland rock. Okay, so if I click on it, I can see some more details. So it tells me what it is, tells me who it's created by, and I have this download button over here. So if I simply click on this, it's going to download the digital twin. And right now, if I use it, I'm going to be using it within FalconEditor, not Falcon Sim. So I can just download it. We don't have to wait for the whole thing to download, but essentially I wanted to show you guys that you can search for a twin or you can even see one of the ones already there and you can download the twin and then use it within your scenario, make it more customized. And this would fall under the first step, which is to acquire the twins. The next step is to manage, which is basically organizing and sharing the digital twins. So after that, we compose all of this. So that is placing all the digital twins into a scenario and deciding how we want them to interact with each other. Then once the scenario is complete, we want to simulate, which is perform the simulation of the scenario and actually run it and see what we get. And then finally, the last step is data, which is the stage where we extract data from the scenario and we see what kind of data we want to use for what kind of purpose. So I think I mentioned that in this tutorial, we're going to be using sensors. So we'll see how we can use those sensors to capture different kinds of data from this environment. To explain the workflow in a little more detail, the acquire step includes getting the assets. So these could be handmade, they could be from the marketplace. You could also use something called photogrammetry and scan real world objects and then convert these to twins. So all of it is possible. And once you have the twins as an FBX file, we can assemble it onto FalconEditor. And once we have all of the environments, items, systems, and utilities, so once we have all of these twins, we'll move on to the step of composing all of this data. So this is combining all of these twins into one single scenario. And once that's ready, we will run the simulation defined in the scenario file. And then finally, we have sensor data pipelines and sensors within Falcon Editor as well that we can use to capture data as well as export it. Okay, so if the environment has loaded for everyone, I can tell you a little bit about how to actually navigate. So can everyone confirm if the scenario is loading?
How about us do if it hasn't loaded and you need us to wait a little bit, let us know.
Yeah, so basically just confirm if the environment's loaded for you.
We haven't had anyone say it hasn't, so I think we're good to go.
Okay, that's great. And so now we have a few things to understand. Normally, if we were using Unreal Engine, we use the WASD keys to navigate as well as the arrow keys. But within Falcon Editor, we can't use the arrow keys to actually move the vehicle forward. So the arrow keys are only to change the camera angle. So I can actually just demonstrate this for you guys. So if I hit the play button, it's going to take a few seconds to load. But the WASD are the standard forward, left, backward, and right. And the arrow keys are for seeing the vehicle through different camera angles. So if this loaded, I can show you guys.
Yeah, mine's taken a long time to load as well. So all of y'all participants, I recommend pressing play to get yours
Right.
starting to load now as well.
Okay, so mine is loaded. So you can just look at my screen for now. And I'll just make this slightly bigger. Okay, so like we said, WASD are for navigation. So right now I'm pressing W, so it's just moving forward. And if I wanted to move to the right, I would press D, A for left. And then if I wanted to move backwards, I would use S. And if I want to see, like for example, right now I can't see the front of the car. So I can use my arrow keys to change the angle. So the direction is still forward, but now I can view it from different camera angles. So this is pretty handy. Oops. Okay. But basically, that's how you navigate. And then I did want to talk a little bit about some of these buttons you might see as well. So on the left, if you hit play, on the left, we have this settings button. So this one shows us the settings menu. So we can turn on show FPS. So here it's showing me the frames per second. So if I don't want to view this, I can turn this off and it disappears. It also shows me the simulation time as well as the compass. So this compass at the top is basically for our navigation, and it tells us which direction we're moving in. And if you don't want to see any of these, you can turn them off. But I think for now, let's just let them remain on. Next, we have this cloud icon. So this tells me that this environment does not have ultra dynamic sky enabled. So I think I'm fine with that. You might have it enabled on your machines, that's fine. And then the last button is the most important for us because this is where we're going to be viewing our sensor data from. So right now, I don't have any sensors loaded on. So we'll do that in the next step. But basically, this will tell me what all sensors I have, what all channels I have enabled within those sensors, and also what data it's capturing at the moment. So this is a little bit about what you can see on your screen if you hit play. And all of this is also through the generic widget. In case any of you were wondering why we had to drag that generic widget onto the map, it's because all of this entire interface is visible because of that twin. So I'm going to stop running this for now. And if everyone can load it, it's fine. If not, do you want us to wait for a few minutes?
Let's pause for a sec to see if anyone has any questions on that.
Yeah.
And if no one presents any questions or problems they're having, then we can move on. Highly recommend, though, you press and play driving around. It's very fun. This is definitely the advantage of having our digital twins packaged like this, where you can just assemble them super easily, especially the ones from the cloud. We have such a large assortment that you can just like download and create a lot of different varieties of environments and system actors working in those environments pretty
Yes.
easily.
Yeah. So one of the benefits of twins is that no matter what kind of scenario you want to create, you have the same set of twins available to you. So a twin is portable, and if I want to use the same twin in a different scenario, I can do that as well. I won't have to go and download it, everything again, and then change it again.
And everything is packaged in that little twin folder versus if you're familiar with Unreal, where it's like a mesh will have materials one place, the mesh another place. You might have a blueprint that assembles all of them, whereas our prepackaged twins are very modular and it's all encompassed within that file that then you can mix and match. It's looking like we're having no questions.
Okay. So then I'm going to assume that everyone's been able to load the scene properly, and you can also drive around. Okay, so I think I think let's move on to the next topic, which is basically what is a sensor? Because we've mentioned that we're going to attach a sensor to the scene and capture data using the sensor. So before that, we need to understand what kind of sensors we have available to Falcon. And a sensor device is something you place in your scenario or attach it to a system twin. So in our case, for this tutorial, the SUV Falcon is the system twin that we've chosen. So we're going to find a sensor to attach onto that. And then as the system twin moves through the scenario, we also we capture whatever that twin is seeing. Just sorry, give me a second. Yeah. So within FalconEditor, we have a bunch of different sensors available to us. And one of them is an RGB sensor. So we'll be using this today. So it works like a real world video camera. And whatever is visible to the car is what we're going to capture in PNG images. And it's like snapshots of how the car is moving through the scenario. There's also a GPS sensor which can record the position of the vehicle, a LiDAR sensor that can create simple 3D view of your surroundings. And we have a lot more. So this is just a partial list that you can see. So we have camera, depth, velocity, IMU, GPS, all of this. In fact, I would like you to also look at the Falcon documentation on sensors. So one is about adding sensors. So I can send this in the chat as well.
That'd be great. Yeah, I was just gonna look that up, but since you have it, that'd be
Yeah.
great if you could put it in the chat.
Yes. And another one was sensors available to Falcon. So if you go through this page, I can send the link of this one as well for anyone who's curious about this. So we have all of these sensors available to us. And the capture sensor is the one which we'll be focusing on today. So as you can see within the capture sensor, all of these are channels that we can capture. We won't be going through all of them, but you should know that you have the option to if you wanted to, as well as all of these sensors. So do go through this link if you're curious about what sensors we have. And I'll talk a little bit about the sensors we're using today. So for the capture sensor, it combines multiple sensors inside one. It provides RGB camera images, depth images, velocity, and all of those channels you saw. You can access any of those as well. So this is like, if you see the third image, that's actually the RGB sensor, RGB channel in this capture sensor, and we'll be using this one today. So what the color channel does is it emulates a RGB camera that's very similar to a real life one. And it's useful to see what the vehicle sees while traveling through an environment. Then we have something called a depth channel. So this provides an image output with distance from the sensor to the object as pixel colored values in the red channel of the image. So for the depth channel, we won't be looking at this today, but it's pretty interesting, and feel free to add it to your vehicle as we move along. Then we have something called a velocity channel. So like the name suggests, it basically provides data based on how this object that the sensor is attached to is moving relative to where the sensor is per frame. The output is something like this. It basically shows you the pixel velocity of an object on the screen in X and Y screen space. So if we add this onto our vehicle, in the sensors panel that we saw while running the simulation, it would appear something like this. Then we also have something called base color channel, which returns only the base color of an object material. So it doesn't show you lighting, shadows, or any of the other effects. So for someone who's only interested in capturing, let's say, the base color, or if you look at the available ones, we have something called roughness, metallic, specular, normal. So if you want to only extract one kind of data from the scene, you also have the option of doing that. And finally, the custom data channel is what provides a grayscale image where different objects are given different numerical values, and these appear as black and white or grayish images. So with custom data, what we do is we use something called segmentation, and we assign different objects inside the scene different values. And when our sensor interacts with them, it captures those values. So it's really great because you don't have to, like, you can assign unique values to something and capture the data through that. Then this is different from the capture sensor. So up till now, all of the sensors were within capture, and now we're discussing GPU. So GPS. So GPS, like the name suggests, it processes a GPS location of any object it's attached to. So you get the latitude, longitude, and the elevation or altitude, and it outputs all of this as a JSON file. So we can also go through this in the tutorial, and you can see the kind of data that it outputs. So it's extremely extensive, and it's capturing the data of the vehicle throughout. Then we have something called IMU. So IMU stands for Inertial Measurement Unit, and this sensor provides different kinds of orientation and pose data based on the parent component it's attached to. So in our tutorial, the parent component is the SUV Falcon. So as the car moves through the desert, we'll see that the XYZ position that's being recorded through the IMU sensor, it's constantly going to change. So in real life, an IMU sensor consists of a gyroscope and accelerometer and magnetometer for all of these. But we can do that within FalconEditor through this IMU sensor. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about segmentation because we discussed this in the custom data channel, and we'll be using this today as well. So a segmentation ID is a unique value which represents a distinct object or component in the scene. So let's say, for example, I have a different variety of plants in a garden scenario, and I want to label only a particular kind of flower with one segmentation ID because I want to differentiate it from the rest. So in this case, I could add a custom data channel and assign a unique value to that kind of plant. And the benefit of this is that it helps us distinguish between different instances of object, even if they're in the same type. So even if a plant is of the same type as all of the other plants, I can uniquely identify them using a segmentation ID. And in case you're wondering why we do all of this, so in real life, if you ever wanted to train a computer vision model and you had to give it data, so for the model to understand and segregate between the different kinds of data, the segmentation IDs are extremely important to separate the individual object. And then if you wanted to generate any sort of statistics about the object presence and placement, you could also do that through segmentation. So I think at this point, we should start attaching our sensors so that all of this can make a little bit more sense. And yeah, so navigate to where the car is in your scene. And hopefully, if you hit play, you'll be able to see it run. I'm going to stop the simulation for now. But if you go onto the car, I'm going to drag out the outliner. So if you select the SUV Falcon and then you right click on it, you see a lot of different options. So we want to scroll down to this one called scripted actor actions and then click on sensors. And then when you do that, you see a list of sensors which are available to you. So in our case, let's start with the capture sensor. So I'm going to click on this and it gives me a pop-up if I want what I want to name this sensor. So I think I'm going to let the name remain as capture sensor, but if you want to rename it to something else, you can do that as well. So I'm going to click OK. And then if you see the capture sensor, it's appeared inside of the car. So if you look at the outliner, it's actually under SUV Falcon. So right now I'm going to drag it up and place it above the car. So that when it drives, I'm not just seeing the inside of the car, I'm actually seeing what the car is seeing as it's moving. So I think right now, just right click on the SUV Falcon, scripted after action sensor, and then just select capture sensor for now. And once everyone's done with this, just let me know. I think for everyone else as well, this is a good time. If you've been able to load the capture sensor on, go to File and select Save Scenario or Save Scenario As. Because the thing is that if we wanted to get output data from this sensor, it needs a folder directory that it can actually go and store that information onto. So right now, because it's unsaved, we don't have any place to save whatever we capture. So you can just click Save Scenario As, and I'm going to name this demo scenario and click Save. Okay, so once you do that, go into your Falcon catalog, and then when you click on scenarios, you should now see the new scenario which you just created. So everyone just file, save as, give the scenario a name, and then make sure, just confirm that it's showing up as a scenario in the scenarios folder.
All right, so we got it, the issue solved.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. So if you are running the scenario and you try to edit things, sometimes things will change. But then as soon as you press stop on the scenario, it'll all go back. Just FYI. Sometimes I'll use that if I'm trying to figure out what parameters I want and they're not showing up in the regular outliner, like I have to go to the scenario to see what the parameters are. And if that happens, I will just manipulate it, save the numbers, and then press stop so that when it goes back to was before, I can paste the numbers in. Oh, while I'm talking about this, some of the keyboard shortcuts do not work in Falcon Editor, like Control Z, Control Copy, Control Paste. However, if you right click and do like Control Copy, Control Paste, it will work.
Now, find the place where we've find capture sensor. If you can't see it, because there's actually a lot of other level, there's a lot of rocks, plants, all of that. So you can even search for it. But once, just select capture scenario and then click on the details panel. So once you do that, you'll see that there is a long list of options available to us. So what I would like you guys to do for now is enable the color channel and then press play so that you can see that if we enable the RGB camera, which is the color channel. So now, if you see my screen, you can see that in the sensors, in the option of sensors, we can now see this capture sensor and its color. So as we move through the scene, we can now see that the image capture is constantly changing based on where the car is moving. So this is what the capture sensor does. But right now, there's still a problem. It's running in the simulation, so we can see that the sensor is capturing something inside the simulation, but it's still not saving it onto our computer. So for the capture sensor to actually save data, click on the search bar at the top in the details panel, and then search for save. So you'll see this option called save data to disk. So just enable this as true. And now whatever we capture here is going to create a folder for us where we can see all of the output data. Posted. So basically we want to select the capture sensor from the outliner. then go into the details panel and enable the color option, which is the first option on top. So just enable that as true so that it's capturing the RGB images it's seeing. And then also search for save and save data to disk so that we actually get some output that we can see. So I think I'll give you guys a 5 minute time period. You can, if this is done, then you can, maybe just freshen up, have a quick break. And for the people who it's not working for, take your time and just make sure that once you've done all of this, you can hit play and then you can actually see the sensor getting some, capturing some images. Okay, does that sound fine? Okay, so for the capture sensor, if it's inside of the car, like if it's like this and you're not able to select it, that's fine. Just search for capture sensor in the outliner and you should see it show up. So once you select it, then you'll see these arrows. So these are the XYZ axis and just click on the blue one and move it upwards. So that should help you get the sensor above the car. Otherwise, what happens is if it's inside of the car, then it's going to capture just the car interiors and it's not going to capture the desert environment, which is what we want. Okay, so I hope this part is clear. And right now, if we hit play, so now we can see, so the sensor won't appear in the actual simulation, but when we move around, we can see that it is capturing different images. So say I move a little forward and go in here. So it's going to be capturing whatever the car is seeing at that point. Okay, and if I exit the simulation, and if I go into my demo scenario, which is the one I created just now, so remember when we did save to disk. So because we did that, we now have an output folder. So you guys just hit play, and then once you exit the simulation, just confirm that you have this output folder. And if I see what's inside of the output folder, it tells me that I have this subfolder called capture sensor, save capture sensor. And if I click on this, it's going to show me this color channel because we enabled the RGB. So if I click on that, I now have a set of PNG images that show me everything that the car was seeing. So this is what we started with. And if I keep scrolling through the images, it's capturing every turn and whatever the car was seeing while traversing through the environment. I get images of all of this. So just make sure that once you click on your scenario, you have an output folder containing all of these images. So this means that you've successfully captured data from the environment and you have it on your machine. Okay, so is everyone getting the output folder? Because if you're not, then I can explain how to save to disk once again. Okay.
Awesome. I'm going to put the Falcon catalog link in there as well in the chat if you're having trouble finding where the catalog was again.
But okay. So I'll run this simulation once more. So you guys can see what it should look like once you hit play. And then once you move around, how the capture sensor data for the color channel keeps changing along with the movement of the car. And if this part is clear, then we can move on to the next part, which is basically attaching segmentation values. Okay, so this is the point where my car is starting from. And now if I wanted to attach segmentation IDs to different things within what is already present, so I'm going to just remove this. So now in the outliner, we see that we have something called instanced foliage actor, and we also have all of these rocks. So if I wanted to uniquely identify any rock or the instant foliage actor, I could add some custom data to that. So for this, just select instant foliage, for example, go on to the details panel, and if you expand this, you see that it has a lot of static mesh subcomponents. So if I just select one of these, it tells me that it's a static mesh component. So for all of these, I can select more than one at one time if I wanted to. So let's say I select component 0 to 25. Now, let's say for all of these, I wanted to attach a unique segmentation ID because I want to separate it from all of the other instance foliage actors. So in the search bar, after selecting all of these, and for selecting multiple items, you can use Shift and then just use the arrow key to select all of the items. So I will search for custom primitive data. And now you see that you find this custom primitive data default channel, and currently it says it has 0 array elements. So let's say I wanted to add some array elements, and in this right now it's 0 by default. So let's say I wanted to give it a segmentation ID of 100. So now what I've done is for all of the components from 0 to 25, I've added the label, the segmentation ID of 100. So whenever my car moves across any of these components, it's going to record that data. And if I wanted, I could also add another channel. So this would be a separate array value. So let's say I create one more and I give this the value of 400. So now what we've done is we've added two channels, 0 and 1. Indexing always starts from 0 by default. So 0 and 1. And I've assigned these two different values. So I want you guys to try this on as well. And I'll show you something else we can do. So let's say that in this scenario, I wanted to add a sagebrush. So I can click and drag this sagebrush onto the scene. And you can see that it's loaded. So let's say I want to drag a couple more. And let's say I want to give these some unique IDs as well, because they're different from the brushes that are already in the scenario. So what I could do is I can select these, and then the same way that we saw for the instant foliage actor, click on the static mesh component, and you'll see custom primitive data defaults. So again, I can add two channels or one channel depending on how many ever I want. And let's say I give these the value of 300 and 500. So now this sage bush will have these two channels with 300 and 500 respectively. So can you guys do this much and then confirm if it's all working smoothly?
Or let us know if she needs to go over the instructions again.
Yeah, I think we have a slide on it as well. So select the instance foliage actor and then select the static mesh component. Because if you search for custom primitive data defaults, it's not going to show if you just select the instance. So you have to select the static mesh component, and then you can click the plus button and then assign a value to it. Are there any doubts in assigning these values? Because this is what we'll be capturing. So if this step is done, then now what we need to do is we've assigned we've assigned some unique segmentation IDs to these different kinds of foliage. So one for the incense foliage, and then one also for the sage bush itself. So I assigned values to this particular sage bush, but now let's say I wanted to assign it to another one. So then I can just select that and assign a new array element from here. So I'm not going to do that because I just want one to have the value right now. But the problem is that our sensor right now at the moment doesn't know to look for this segmentation ID. And that's because if you click on the capture sensor, let's remove this. So if you click on the capture sensor and scroll down, we see that we have custom data 0 to 3. So these are 4 channels for recording data, but we haven't enabled any of them. So right now, I'm going to enable 0 and 1 because in each of the components I've assigned the segmentation IDs to, there's been 2 channels. So now I want the sensor to be to have both of these channels open to be receptive to these IDs. So just make sure that you enable custom data 0 and 1 within the capture sensor. So just if you scroll down, it's just a little bit below the color value which we enabled. Okay. And then if I hit play, and now if I scroll down in the sensors panel, I see that I have 2 additional channels for custom data 0 and 1. And right now we don't see anything in them because depending on machine to machine, the display actually cannot capture int32 images, which is the type of this image. But we'll get to that in a little bit, how we can extract the data. But if you see a black image, that's fine. Like that's completely normal. And now I'm going to continue driving around through the scene. So this does not really change, but that's okay. So let's say I drive around. So I'm going to try to cover a little bit of the foliage because we've assigned values to those. And we've already been near that sage bush, so it's already gotten those values as well. So I'm going to run this simulation for a few seconds, make sure I'm capturing enough data. And then after a few seconds, I'm going to end the simulation. Okay, so now once I've done that, let's go into our output folder because now that we've captured some more data, we should ideally see some more channels. So if I click on the data, this one is just color. Okay, so in the most recent folder, like right now it's 2326, so 2325 is when this was recorded. And now in addition to the color, I also have custom data 0 and custom data 1. So if I click on these, it's going to be just black images, but that's fine because if we run a Python script to decode these images, we actually get values that look somewhat like this. So I wrote a Python script in a Jupyter notebook on Google Colab. We also have a bunch of Python code available on the website for this. So if you just go and search for segmentation visualization, it'll be there. And the original grayscale is somewhat like this for the foliage. And then when you see the colored segmentation, you get these values. So it does mean that we've successfully captured the data. It's just that we don't get to see it on our screens because it's not readable in this format on our computers. So it just looks blank, but it actually has a lot of different values. And if you look at the slide once again, so it says that this 3,688 unique values in this in color range. So it's actually assigned a lot of values to the segmented data. But if you can't see it through your computer, that's fine. It's normal. Okay. And I'm going to wait for everyone to catch up on this. So what we've done is we've enabled custom data 0 and 1 in our capture sensor. We've played the simulation, and once you end it, you should be able to see the new channels inside your output folder. So there should be 3 channels now: color, custom data 0, and custom data 1.
If you don't see it, some reasons could be if you didn't save the scenario, or if you didn't click the little check boxes to either output the data or the check boxes to include the specific custom data in your sensor.
Right. So just make sure that within the capture sensor, uh, in the details panel, you should have color custom data 01 selected, as well as the save data to disk checkbox enabled. So if you've got that, then hopefully you should also see 3 different channels with the data. And I actually did want to demonstrate one of the other sensors as well. So you guys don't have to do this on your machines. It's mostly for demo purposes. But the way we added a sensor for the capture, so if I go to scripted actor actions and click on one of the other sensors. So let's say I want to select the GPU sensor, for example. So if I select OK, and then same as we did for the capture sensor, we want to save this data to the disk. So if I enable that and I then run this simulation, I should also be capturing the GPS data of the car as it's moving through the scenario. So if I hit play, in the sensors panel, if I scroll down, you see that this is now GPS channel with latitude, longitude, and elevation. So if I move the car, you'll notice that these values are also changing along with the movement. So depending on the exact coordinates of the car, these GPS values are getting changed as well. So you guys don't have to do this step. It's more for demonstrating how we can use one of the other sensors as well. So if I exit that simulation and now check my output, yep. If you guys could give me an idea of where you are with following along, that would be great. So I can know if I should cover something again or give you some more time.
I think you're doing a great job leaving breaks after good instructions. And then I think if people are having a problem, please reach out and we'll answer the question. But if you're not reaching out and asking a question, we're going to assume everything is good.
Right. So just in case anyone was curious about what the output data looks like from the GPS sensor, I can show you that as well. So this is going to be in a JSON file. And if I just open it within Notepad, so I have a bunch of data. So I have latitude, longitude, and altitude, as well as the time. And you can see that it's a bunch of different values with all of the coordinates changing along with the time. So this might, it looks like a lot of data, but if you actually were to feed it into some model for analyzing where the car was at each time, this is actually incredibly helpful. And we can do this with any of the other sensors as well through the same method. So just click on the scripted actor actions and then sensors, and then whichever sensor you want to capture, you can get the respective data. Okay. Okay, I think then, okay, if there's any questions, let me know. But I think for now, I wanted to also talk about some of the different outputs you might see for some of the different sensors and sensor channels. So we noticed that for the RGB camera, we got PNG images. So these were pretty straightforward to read, and we can directly just see whatever the vehicle has captured at different points in time. Then if we were to enable the depth channel, so depth is also within capture sensor. And if we were to enable that, we would get these NumPy files. And this would again contain all of the depth information. For GPS and IMU data, we get JSON files. So for IMU, it would also contain things about your orientation, rotation, all of that. And then the segmentation we already discussed. So if you're getting a blank image as your output, that's fine. If you run a Python script on it, you'll be able to see the colored segmentation visualization. And in terms of the scenario, at this point, we are pretty much done creating everything that we wanted to create with this. So you can go onto File and then click on Save Scenario, and it should save all of this. And then let's say, for example, now that we've saved a scenario, we want to upload it onto one of the sessions on Falcon Cloud. So over here, we can also upload our scenarios and run them. And even if we didn't want to upload it, if we just wanted to package it and use it somewhere else. So for this, we have something called a process called packaging, which generates a PAK file. So we won't package it right now because it's an extremely lengthy process. But just to show you how that would happen, we can just right click on any of the twins. And then the second option is to package the twin. So if you select that, it will package this in a way that you can then export it. And I think that pretty much hits all of the points we wanted to cover during the session. So I can give you guys a few minutes if you want to test anything or ask me any questions. But yeah, we've pretty much achieved our objective of creating a new scenario, placing some twins onto it, and adding sensors to those twins, and extracting some data that can be seen outside of the simulation. So let me know if you have any questions, and definitely create a Falcon Edu subscription because that gives you access to all of these as well as some new exercises.
Yeah, let me go over EDU real fast, and then if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat while I'm going over that, and then we can come back to it.
Okay, sure.
Do
Should
you mind if I
expand
share
it?
my screen?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, so along with your EDU subscription, you also have different learning content. I've already talked about the Discord, and we have questions and intros already from this lesson, which is great. We love to see you on there. So that's a place you can ask questions. And then we've also created these lessons in addition to the classes, like the classes that you're doing today. So like the class that you're doing today are teaching individual skills that are maybe geared more towards creation. These lessons that we have are using scenarios that have already been assembled and maybe you walking you through different parts of how to assemble different parts of the scenario as well. But then we're showing you how to gather the data and then actually use that data that you're gathering from the simulation in order to train an AI model. So for the first couple exercises, we're using YOLO V8 and we're doing object detection. This one's actually a work in progress coming very, very soon. But we got the object detection here and then object detection with an added twin. Both start at a very basic level. So if you don't have any experience with this, I've designed it so that you have the information that you need and the resources you need in order to learn and to actually create the data and train the AI model. And you can see it happening in real time as you're working with it. We also have different videos here, like I mentioned before. These ones are some of the ones that are linked in the handout. Things with like some of the basics. Some of this is what we went over in the course today. Some of it goes into a little bit more depth of like how to get an asset and promote it to a twin and then bring it into Falcon, the Falcon mode of FalconEditor. We also, as I mentioned before, have ones where it talks more about how to use the Python and how to create your own system twins. So this is a resource that's continuously going to be growing and expanding that teaches you not only how to use FalconEditor for some specific purposes, but it also teaches you machine learning concepts. We go through why we're doing what we're doing for the different scenarios, how that helps create the data that you need to create a model that works not just on the synthetic data, but also on data in the real world. And some people are skeptical that that works, but you can see it happen with these exercises with data that you create yourself, not just the data that we give you. It also talks about some of like the outputs of the training process. for the AI and what that means, how to look for problems, how to improve on them. So overall is a really good learning resource that teaches you kind of about a variety of topics with this process. And then on the documentation, as Shreya mentioned, you can also go through some of these onboarding processes. These are less geared towards like a specific output, but they do give a lot of depth onto all the functionality of Falcon Editor and all the different things you can do. And as a reminder, EDU, you also get access to the Twin library, which again is consistently growing and expanding. So we're creating new things. Yeah, so that's my little EDU spiel. I don't think we have any questions in the chat. Shreya, did we go over in detail promoting an asset to a twin?
No, we actually didn't go over that because we directly got into the scenario building. Would you like me to go over it right now? I did
I
notice
think
that we
since we
didn't
have
cover the promotion thing.
Yeah, I think since we have time, that'd be really good. So what we're talking about is
Okay.
you can take any digital 3D asset from the Fab Marketplace, from any other place online that you want to download. You can bring it into Falcon Editor and then you can promote it and make it into a twin like what we assembled in the scenario today. So Shreya's going to go over that real fast. It's actually pretty easy.
Yeah, it's actually just a it's very basic step. But wait, I have to share my screen. Okay. So this was where we left off with our current scenario. So you can save this one. And for creating a twin or promoting an existing item to a twin, so we're going to see how that sagebrush that was there in the twin, that was already a twin. We're going to go into the blueprint version of that within Unreal with a U project file. So we're going to see the blueprint class. First, we should open up, click on file and open new, click on open project and then browse. And over here, we're already within template project because that's the last project that we opened. But if you go into the work folder, you'll see that we have a bunch of other options as well. So let's say we select the sage brush, should be sage bush, but never mind. And let's say we open up this U project file. This you can save it or you can not save it.
I think you actually have to put not save. I think if you push save, I don't think it works. But it's just the temp folders, so you're okay.
Okay, so what's now open is the Unreal mode, and this is the one which most of us are familiar with. So I'm asking me to log in, so I'll do that.
While she's doing that on your own machines, you can create a token so you don't have to log in every time. We didn't have this because that was just, these are your virtual machines. But in the documentation, it shows you how to create a token so that you don't have to log in every time.
Okay, I've logged in. And now if I go into content duality, I see that there's maps and there's assets. So for maps, we can see that if we open this up, we basically get two of these. So if you see the outliner, this tells us that this is the blueprint of Sagebush 1, and this one is Sagebush 2. So if I wanted to create a new twin from this blueprint, I can navigate to that blueprint asset. And over here, I see that both of these are blueprint classes. And if I open any of these up, it's going to be very similar to blueprint classes that we're already familiar with. So it opens this standard Unreal interface for the class where I have the viewport where I can see what it is. And then I have a bunch of things I can control, the variables, functions, all of that, construction script, event graph. So this is all of the standard things. And just to show you that it's a regular blueprint, let's say I wanted to convert this to a twin. So I just simply have to right click and then click promote to twin. And I can give it a new name. So let's say I want to name this new. And it already knows that the type is item twin. So it doesn't even give me an option. It gives me a utility twin option, but because I want it to remain as an item twin that I can place, we'll leave this as item twin. And if I just click promote, it's been promoted. And then if I were to check if I've actually gotten this new twin, if I go to my twin folder, now I have Sagebrush 01 new. And this is the one which we just created. So if I were to open up a new scenario now, this would be the Sagebrush new would be one of the twins which is available to me. So I can just click and drag that and place that into any scenario I want. So it's pretty easy. If you have an already existing blueprint class, you can just simply just right click and click on promote to twin.
Thanks so much, Shreya. Super easy. All right. Well, we're finishing a little bit early. So if anyone wants to stick around and ask questions, feel free. But if not, feel free to hop off. Shreya, do you mind hanging on though, in case there's
Yes,
questions
sir.
and stuff? Thanks. Thanks, guys.